What happens when two of entertainment's biggest personalities collide on live television in a way nobody saw coming? Tonight, we're breaking down one of the most shocking moments in late-night history when Blake Shelton sat down with Craig Ferguson and things went from friendly banter to absolute chaos in a matter of minutes. This wasn't your typical celebrity interview gone awkward. This was a full-blown confrontation that ended with security getting involved and a country music superstar walking off set. If you want to see how a simple conversation can spiral into one of the most talked-about television moments of the decade, you're in the right place. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe how this unfolded. The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson was known for its unpredictable energy. Craig never followed a script, never relied on cards, and his interviews often went in directions that surprised even his producers. That spontaneous approach made him a favorite among guests and viewers alike. But on this particular evening, that same unpredictability would create a situation that nobody in the studio was prepared for. Blake Shelton walked onto the stage with his usual confidence, waving to the audience as they cheered. He was there to promote his latest album and talk about his recent tour. The first few minutes went exactly as expected. Craig made jokes about Blake's height. Blake laughed about Craig's accent, and the audience was eating it up. Everything seemed perfectly normal. "So, Blake," Craig said, leaning back in his chair with that mischievous grin he was famous for. "I've been listening to your new album, and I have to ask you something. Do you ever get tired of singing about the same things? Trucks, beer, girls leaving, girls coming back. It's like country music has about 5 topics, and you just rotate them." The audience laughed, but there was a slight edge to the question that Blake seemed to pick up on immediately. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he responded. "Well, Craig, I could ask you the same thing about your show. How many times can you make the same joke about being Scottish, or talk about your robot skeleton before people get tired of it?" The audience went quiet for a moment. Craig's eyebrows shot up, but he was still smiling. "Oh, so we're doing this now, are we? All right, then. Fair point. But at least my robot skeleton doesn't pretend to be deep and meaningful while singing about dirt roads." Blake shifted in his seat, and you could see his jaw tighten just slightly. "You know what's interesting, Craig? I came on the show because I thought you were different from all the other late-night hosts. But you're doing exactly what they all do. Acting like country music is some kind of joke, like the millions of people who connect with it don't matter." "I never said it was a joke," Craig replied. And now his tone had changed, too. The playfulness was gone. "I asked you a legitimate question about creativity and artistic growth. If you can't handle that without getting defensive, maybe you should stick to interviews where they just lob you softball questions about your girlfriend." The mention of Blake's personal life seemed to strike a nerve. He leaned forward, his voice getting louder. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. You think because you've got this late-night show and you throw in some big words that you're somehow more intelligent or cultured than someone who makes country music. That's the most pretentious garbage I've ever heard." Craig wasn't backing down. "Pretentious? I'm pretentious? You're the one who can't take a simple question about your songwriting without turning it into some culture war nonsense. I've interviewed hundreds of musicians, Blake. Rock stars, pop stars, jazz legends. You know what they all have in common? They can talk about their craft without acting like I've personally attacked them." "Maybe that's because you didn't attack them," Blake shot back. "You came at me sideways from the minute I sat down. All that stuff about trucks and beer, you were setting me up to look stupid." "Well, I'm not stupid, Craig. And I'm not going to sit here and let you mock what I do." The studio audience was completely silent now. You could feel the tension radiating from the stage. Craig's producers were probably having a panic attack in the control room, but the cameras kept rolling. "I wasn't trying to make you look stupid," Craig said. And for a moment, his voice softened slightly. "But if you think every question that challenges you is an attack, then you've got thinner skin than I thought. This is a talk show, Blake. We talk. Sometimes that talk includes questions that might make you uncomfortable. That's the whole point." Blake stood up from his chair, and that's when everyone in the studio knew this had gone beyond a normal heated exchange. "You know what? I don't need this. I don't need to sit here and defend myself to someone who clearly has no respect for what I do or where I come from. You want to sit in your little late-night bubble and look down on country music and everyone who makes it? Go ahead, but I'm not participating. Craig stood up, too, which was unusual for him during interviews.
Sit down, Blake. Come on.
We're adults here. If I crossed a line, we can talk about it. But walking off in the middle of the show because you got your feelings hurt is not the answer. My feelings aren't hurt, Blake said, his voice rising again. I'm just done pretending like this is a conversation when it's really just you trying to score points with your audience by making fun of the country guy. I've seen enough Hollywood types like you to know how this works. That last comment seemed to genuinely anger Craig. His face flushed red, and he pointed at Blake. Hollywood types? Are you serious right now? I'm from Scotland, mate. I grew up with nothing. I worked in factories before I ever got into comedy. Don't you dare stand there and act like you're some authentic working-class hero while I'm just a fake Hollywood elitist. That's complete rubbish. The argument was escalating fast, and neither man seemed willing to back down. Blake took a step toward Craig's desk, and that's when things got physical. Not physically aggressive, but definitely invading. Personal space in a way that made everyone uncomfortable. Craig didn't move back, though. If anything, he stepped closer to the edge of his desk, meeting Blake's energy with his own. What are you going to do, Blake? You going to take a swing at me on national television? That'll really show everyone how mature and professional you are. Go ahead, make my night. Blake stopped moving forward, but his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. I'm not going to hit you, Craig, but I am going to tell you exactly what I think of you and this whole setup. You invited me here under false pretenses. Your people told my people this was going to be a fun, light conversation. Instead, you ambushed me with this condescending attitude from the start. Craig laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. Ambushed you with what? A question about your music. If that's an ambush to you, then you're in the wrong business. Every artist gets asked about their creative process. Every single one. But somehow when I ask you, it's an attack on your entire way of life. Because of how you asked it, Blake fired back. The tone, the smirk on your face, the way you said it like country music is beneath you. I've been in this industry long enough to know when someone's being genuine and when they're being a smart mouth. And you, Craig Ferguson, are being a smart mouth. The audience was still dead silent, but you could hear some nervous shuffling in the seats. Nobody knew if they should laugh, applaud, or just sit there in shock. This had gone so far beyond normal television boundaries that there was no template for how to react. A smart mouth, Craig repeated slowly. Interesting. You know what I think, Blake? I think you came on this show expecting everyone to kiss your boots and tell you how wonderful you are. And the second someone treated you like an actual artist who should be able to discuss their work critically, you couldn't handle it. That's not my problem, mate. That's yours. Blake's voice dropped lower, which somehow made it more intense. You don't know anything about me, or what I can handle. I've handled more criticism and fought through more obstacles than you could possibly imagine. But there's a difference between criticism and disrespect. And you crossed that line the second I sat down in this chair. Then enlighten me, Craig said, spreading his arms wide. Where exactly did I disrespect you? By suggesting that country music has recurring themes. That's not disrespect. That's an observation. Every genre has patterns. Pop music is repetitive. Rock music is repetitive. Even classical music had its formulas. I wasn't singling you out. I was starting a conversation about creativity and commercial music. But you took it personally before I even finished the thought. Blake shook his head. No, you're rewriting history now. You weren't starting a conversation. You were making a joke at my expense. There's a difference, and everyone watching knows it. Don't try to backtrack, now, and act like you were being some kind of thoughtful interviewer. You were going for a laugh, and you used me to get it. Craig's expression hardened even more.
Fine.
You want me to be honest? Completely honest. I'll be honest. I do think a lot of modern country music is formulaic. I do think it's become more about marketing and image than actual songwriting. And yes, I think artists like you who have the platform and the talent to push boundaries instead play it safe, because that's what sells. Is that disrespectful? Maybe. But it's also true. And if you can't hear that without losing your mind, then maybe you know I'm right. The gasp from the audience was audible. Craig had just gone from defending his question to outright attacking Blake's artistic integrity. This wasn't banter anymore. This was personal. Blake's face went red. You have no idea what you're talking about.
None.
You sit behind this desk and you judge people's art like you're some kind of authority. But what have you created, Craig? Comedy routines. A late-night show that copies the same format as every other late-night show. You want to talk about playing it safe and being formulaic? Look in the mirror. At least I'm self-aware about it. Craig snapped back. I've never pretended to be something I'm not. I know exactly what this show is. It's entertainment. It's silly. It's not trying to be profound. But you stand on stage with your guitar and act like you're some kind of poet of the common man while you sing songs that were focus grouped and market tested to death. That's what I can't stand, the fake authenticity. Blake took another step forward, and now he was right at the desk. Fake authenticity? Every song I've ever written comes from my life, from my experiences, from things I've actually felt and lived through. You don't get to tell me what's authentic about my own experience. You don't get to decide what's real about my music or my career or anything else about me. Craig stood his ground. Then prove me wrong right now. Tell me something real. Tell me something that's not just another verse about lost love and whiskey. Show me that there's more to Blake Shelton than the brand you've built. The challenge hung in the air between them. For a moment, it seemed like Blake might actually respond with something vulnerable, something honest. But then his expression changed, hardened, and he stepped back from the desk. I don't owe you anything, Craig. Not an explanation, not a defense, nothing. The fact that you think you can demand that from me just proves everything I've been saying. You think you're entitled to judge me, to push me, to make me perform for you like some kind of trained animal? Well, I'm done. I'm walking out of here, and you can explain to your viewers why your guest left in the middle of the show. Craig's voice rose to match Blake's. Go ahead and walk. Run away from a difficult conversation like you've probably run away from every difficult moment in your life. That's real courage, Blake. That's real authenticity. When things get tough, just leave. I'm sure that'll play great with your fans. That comment seemed to stop Blake in his tracks. He turned back to face Craig. And now there was something different in his eyes. Not just anger, but genuine hurt mixed with rage. You don't know a single thing about my life or what I've been through. Not one thing. And the fact that you'd stand there and make assumptions about me based on a 15-minute conversation tells me everything I need to know about you as a person and as an interviewer. Then tell me, Craig challenged again. Tell me what I don't know. Make me understand. That's what this platform is for, Blake. To have real conversations, to break through the publicity and the image, and get to something true. But you have to be willing to do that. And so far all you've done is throw a tantrum, because I asked you a tough question. Blake was shaking his head before Craig even finished. This isn't a tough question. This is an insult disguised as an interview, and I'm not going to stand here and let you psychoanalyze me or bait me into saying something I'll regret. I came here to talk about my music, not to be your punching bag for the night. Nobody's making you a punching bag, Craig insisted. We're having a heated discussion, that's all. This is what real conversation looks like. It's messy. It's uncomfortable sometimes, but it's honest. Or would you rather I just asked you about your favorite color and what you like on your pizza? I'd rather you treated me with basic respect, Blake said flatly. That's all I wanted from the start. Just treat me like a human being instead of a stereotype you can mock. Craig's expression shifted slightly, and for the first time since this started, there seemed to be a crack in his defensive wall. I never tried to mock you as a person, Blake. If that's how it came across, then maybe I did cross a line. But you have to understand, from where I'm sitting, you came out here defensive from the beginning. Because I know how these things go, Blake responded, his voice still heated, but slightly less aggressive. I know what people in your world think about people in my world. Country artists are punchlines to you. We're the ones you make fun of at cocktail parties. We're the simple folks who couldn't possibly understand real art or culture. So yeah, I came in with my guard up, because experience has taught me to. Craig opened his mouth to respond, but before he could get a word out, Blake continued, his voice getting louder again. And you know what? I was right to have my guard up because you proved my point within the first 5 minutes. You went exactly where I thought you'd go. Straight to the stereotypes. straight to the condescension. So don't stand there and act surprised that I'm angry. My world? Craig shot back, any softness that had started to appear immediately vanishing. What is my world, Blake? You keep talking about me like I'm some elitist snob, but you don't know anything about where I came from or what I've had to do to get here. You're so caught up in your own narrative about being disrespected that you can't see past your own ego. My ego? Blake's voice cracked slightly from the volume. You're the one with the television show where you sit on a throne and decide who's worthy of respect and who isn't. You're the one who thinks your opinion about music matters more than the millions of people who actually buy and listen to it. But sure, tell me more about my ego, Craig. The argument had now gone on for several minutes, and you could see movement in the wings of the stage. Producers were clearly trying to figure out what to do. Should they cut to commercial? Should they try to intervene? The show was live, and everything that was happening was being broadcast to millions of viewers. Craig pointed at Blake, his finger jabbing the air. The difference between us is that I can admit when I'm wrong. I can have my mind changed. Can you say the same? Or are you so invested in being the victim here that nothing I say will matter? Victim? Blake laughed, but there was no humor in it. I'm not playing victim, Craig. I'm calling out disrespect when I see it. There's a difference. But you can't seem to understand that because in your mind, anyone who challenges you must be too sensitive or too stupid to get your sophisticated humor. I never called you stupid, Craig said. And now there was real frustration in his voice. Not once I questioned your artistic choices, which is completely different. But you've decided that any criticism of your work is a personal attack, and that's just not how the world works. Blake's hands were still clenched at his sides. When the criticism comes wrapped in insults and mockery, yeah, it feels personal. If you'd asked me a genuine question about my creative process, if you'd shown any real interest in understanding what I do and why I do it, we'd be having a completely different conversation right now. But you didn't do that. You took shots, and now you're upset that I'm shooting back. Fine, Craig said, his accent getting thicker as he got more heated. You want a genuine question? Here's one. Why are you so threatened by criticism? Why can't you separate yourself as a person from your music as a product? Every great artist I've ever met can do that. They can hear criticism of their work without falling apart. What makes you different? Blake's jaw clenched, so tight you could see the muscles working. I'm not falling apart, Craig. I'm standing up for myself. Something tells me if someone came on this show and spent 10 minutes insulting your comedy and your show, you wouldn't be so calm and collected either. People insult my show all the time, Craig countered. Reviewers, critics, random people on the internet. You know what I do? I either ignore it or I listen if they have a point. I don't storm onto their platforms and accuse them of having some agenda against me. That's because you control this platform, Blake said, gesturing around the studio. You have all the power here. I'm just a guest who is stupid enough to think this would be a fair conversation. But nothing about this has been fair from the start. The tension was reaching a breaking point. You could see it in both men's body language, in the way they were both leaning forward, in the redness of their faces. And then Blake made a move that changed everything. He reached over and grabbed one of the coffee mugs sitting on Craig's desk, the one that Craig always drank from during the show. For a second, it looked like he might throw it. The audience gasped. Craig took a step back, but instead of throwing it, Blake just held it up. This, Blake said, his voice shaking with anger. This is what you do, Craig. You invite people onto your show. You offer them coffee. You make them think they're safe and welcome. And then you attack them. You're a coward who hides behind jokes and sarcasm because you can't have an honest conversation without trying to win some imaginary competition. Craig's face went from red to almost purple.
Put the mug down, Blake.
Or what?
Huh.
Blake challenged. You'll call security. Have me thrown out? That would be perfect for you, wouldn't it? Then you can play the victim and tell everyone how the crazy country singer lost his mind on your show. Great television, Craig. Really great television. I said, put it down. Craig's voice was low and dangerous now. This has gone far enough. Blake stared at him for a long moment, then slammed the mug back down on the desk so hard that coffee splashed everywhere. The crash echoed through the silent studio. You're right. It has gone far enough, way too far. I should have walked out the second you started your little routine, but I thought maybe, just maybe, you'd show some professionalism. I was wrong. That's when security finally stepped in. Two large men in suits emerged from the wings and started walking toward the desk. Blake saw them coming and held up his hands. "Don't worry, I'm leaving," he said loudly. "I don't need to be escorted out like some kind of criminal. I'm done here, anyway." Craig, still standing behind his desk with coffee stains on his shirt, pointed at Blake. "You're unbelievable. You come on my show, you insult me, you slam things around, and now you're going to walk out like you're taking some kind of moral stand. That's rich, Blake. That's really rich." Blake turned back one more time, and his voice carried across the entire studio. "You want to know why I'm walking out? Because staying here and continuing the circus would give you exactly what you want. You want drama.
You want conflict.
You want something to make your show memorable. Well, congratulations, Craig. You got it. I hope it was worth it." "Worth what?" Craig shouted back. "Worth having an actual conversation for once instead of another boring promotional interview. Yeah, it was worth it. At least we showed people who you really are." "And who's that?" Blake demanded, stopping at the edge of the stage. "Someone who can't handle the truth," Craig said. "Someone who built a career on being relatable and down to earth. But the second someone treats you like a real artist with real accountability, you crumble. That's who you are, Blake." Blake stood there for what felt like an eternity, looking at Craig across the studio. The security guards were close now, but they hadn't touched him yet. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of this disaster. Finally, Blake spoke, and his voice was quieter, but somehow more intense. "You're wrong about me, Craig. You're wrong about my music. You're wrong about why I do what I do. And you're wrong about this whole situation. But I'm not going to stand here and try to convince you anymore. You've already made up your mind, just like you made it up before I even walked out here. So I'm leaving. And you can tell whatever story you want your audience. Just remember that they saw everything that happened here tonight. They'll make their own judgments." With that, Blake Shelton turned and walked off the stage. The security guards followed him, but he was already gone, disappearing through the curtain and presumably straight out of the building. The studio audience sat in complete shock, nobody knowing whether to applaud or boo, or just remain silent. Craig stood behind his desk, breathing hard, his shirt stained with coffee, looking out at his audience with an expression that was part anger, part disbelief, and maybe part regret. He ran his hand through his hair and let out a long breath. "Well," he said finally, his voice, "that happened." The audience gave a nervous laugh, uncertain how to respond. Craig looked down at his desk, at the spilled coffee and the scattered papers, then back up at the camera. "We're going to take a commercial break," he said. "And when we come back, I honestly have no idea what we're going to do, because that was supposed to be our only guest tonight.
So stick around, I guess."
This is the Late Late Show, where apparently nothing goes according to plan. The show cut to commercial, but the damage was done. In those 15 minutes, a routine celebrity interview had turned into one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night television history. Social media immediately exploded with reactions. Think pieces were written before the show even ended, and both Blake Shelton and Craig Ferguson became trending topics worldwide. The clash revealed something that many had suspected, but few had seen so clearly. That beneath the polished surface of celebrity interviews and promotional appearances, there are real tensions, real egos, and real conflicts waiting to erupt. When two strong personalities collide, and neither is willing to back down, the results can be spectacular, uncomfortable, and utterly unforgettable. This wasn't just a disagreement about music or interviewing styles. This was about respect, about class, about authenticity, and about the fundamental disconnect between different worlds of entertainment. Whether you sided with Blake or with Craig, one thing was certain. This was a moment that would be discussed, analyzed, and debated for years to come. If you made it this far, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below. Who do you think was in the right here? Was Craig out of line with his questions, or was Blake too sensitive to handle legitimate criticism?